Okay, let's start off talking about the importance of building some balance in our seat separate from our reins. You might hear a lot of people talk about having an independent seat. What they're referring to is they have balance, they have an independent seat separate from the reins. What we need to think about these reins being nothing more than for direction, to offer direction to my horse that I'm going to build some control through. If I'm finding places where I'm balancing on my reins, means I'm going to be pulling on my horse's face at times where there probably shouldn't be any contact. And if I'm going to get these horses to where they're consistent and they're soft and they're supple and they're willing to follow a feel and not lean into that pressure, then I've got to show them that I'm only going to use these when I need them. And as I travel around this country doing clinics and riding people's horses for them and helping them deal with their own horses, there's nothing I see more than people that are stuck balancing right here on these reins. And here's what we need to realize. When we're sitting on a horse, we have a lot of self-preservation that kicks in once these horses get to moving. And all that self-preservation does in us is it basically reminds us we don't want to hit the ground. And our mind gets to worrying about what can I hold on to stay up here. And when we're thinking about that, when we're thinking about holding on to something, we focus our balance in our hands. Okay? It might be out here on our reins, which is where it generally is, or it might be on my reins and my saddle horn. And I tell people a lot at clinics all the time, that saddle horn is there for a reason. Not necessarily to hold on to, but it's there. If you feel like you've got to grab a hold of it to keep from falling off, I would rather see you put your hand there to keep from falling off, but the idea is to turn loose of it as quick as I can. Because the longer my hand stays focused on that saddle horn, where I feel like I'm squeezing the blood out of that saddle horn, the more my mind gets centered on that for my balance. Okay? And when you know, there's a lot of people out there that have no balance sitting on a horse. Maybe they've never ridden, maybe they've never loped before, maybe their horse is pretty green. And there's going to be times they're going to go there. So here's what I'll tell them. It's important how you put your hand on there to not influence all the rest of your seat. Most people will grab that saddle horn just like that, and when they do, their arm gets tight, okay, and they find themselves pulling themselves forward the whole time. So while they've got a hold of that saddle horn here, all they're doing is they're pulling themselves up and getting themselves right up over that saddle horn. And in my mind, I'm going to tell myself that my head, my nose should always be behind that saddle horn. If I'm leaned out over here, I'm too far forward. Okay, I'm going to be top heavy. My horse leans on me at all, he could pull me right down over his neck. So what I like to think about is if my hand's going to go there, I'm going to set my hand on top of the saddle horn to where if I did grab a hold of it, I'm going to be thinking about pushing myself back here where I can stay in my seat and not be pulling myself out of my seat. Okay, but again, even if I grab a hold of it like this and I'm pushing myself back to keep myself from falling off, I've got to turn loose of that saddle horn as quick as possible. Because here's the three components that I really need to be thinking about for building some balance through my body. Number one is in my seat. Okay, I shouldn't be flopping around in my saddle all the time. I ought to be able to get my seat back here in this saddle and keep it there. I shouldn't have a lot of daylight floating around underneath my behind. Okay, now there's times where maybe we're trotting across this pasture today and you'll see me posting where I'll rise and fall with this horse's feet, and I will come up in the saddle, but I won't be leaning forward. Okay, I need to think about keeping some pressure on my seat bones, staying back here in my seat. Number two is from my legs, from my knees to my hip. I like to tell people this part of your leg is for you. Okay, you can use from your knees to your hip to grip, to hold on. Okay, so I've got my seat planted back here in my saddle. I'm using my legs to hold on, to grip with, okay, from my knees up. Number three down there is in my stirrups are my feet. okay? I'm gonna have pressure on my stirrups, and that pressure is gonna vary depending on what I'm doing, okay? And it might vary from stirrup to stirrup as to what I'm doing. I can put my foot all the way in my stirrup like this, or I can slide that stirrup back to where it's just right on the ball of my foot, okay? But what I need to be thinking about in foot position in my stirrup is I want my heel slightly lower than my toe. And I so oftentimes see people that have their stirrups so long that when they try to put a little bit of pressure on their stirrups for balance, they find their legs are getting straight and they feel like they're having to step down there on their tippy toes just to reach that stirrup because it's so long. Okay, and what happens when the toe goes down, the heel comes up, and if your leg is getting straighter, okay, you just start going this way. Your feet come back, next thing you know, you're gripping your horse back here. He's speeding up, you're about to fall off, and then he starts going up. Okay, so I'm gonna have my stirrups short enough that you guys can see the bend that I have here in my knee. Okay, and the idea is as I'm traveling around and I'm going from a walk to a trot to a lope, maybe to a gallop, as the speed varies, I'm going to find myself putting or feeling like I need to put a little different amount of pressure on my stirrups at a trot, at a lope, at a gallop. Okay, and what you often see is as that horse speeds up, we feel like our stirrups get a little bit longer. So I encourage people, don't set your stirrups for how you need them to be at a walk. Set your stirrups for how you need them to be at a lope, which might be a hole or two shorter than what you're typically riding at. Maybe you trail ride and most of the time you just stay at a walk. Okay, my idea is we go out on these horses, and I'm going to demonstrate with old Rascal this morning, is when we go outside, okay, very few people fall off these horses at a walk. It's when they speed up that things start to happen, they lose their balance. That's the kind of stuff we need to practice. And I've got to have all three components, my seat, my legs, and my feet, working with me to help build that balance. Because without balance, you can't offer direction to your horse if he needs it. Okay, and I see people all the time as we travel around doing these clinics. We bring a lot of people in here to the ranch here in Coates, Kansas, because we've got 3,000 acres of trees and brush and creeks and hills and gullies. We got a lot of things we can go outside and work on, and we'll take people off down these creeks and their horse might spook at a turkey, and that horse starts to take off through them trees, and here they are right here like this trying to stay on. And all you are is a passenger right then. And if you're needing to offer some direction to get through those trees, or maybe just get that horse slowed down, we've got to turn loose of that saddle horn, and we've got to get to where we can operate our hands and not have to worry about what our balance is doing. So when that horse does need direction, we're right there to follow through with it. So to me, there's nothing more important, guys, as we go through this series, this DVD today, there's nothing going to be more important than my balance. Everything hinges off my balance, because without that, I'm not ever going to be able to offer this horse what he needs. Once we have that established, let's talk briefly about the three positions we're going to work with our feet. Positions 1, positions 2, and positions 3. Position 1 is going to be right behind my front cinch. Okay, position 1 is the spot where I'm going to operate my horse's shoulder, his forehand. Okay, right behind the front cinch. Now I could exaggerate that and I could come up here if need be, just to help encourage my horse to focus on is the shoulder, the forehand that I'm trying to move lateral to the right or to the left. Position 2 is going to be right between my front cinch and my back cinch, okay, right in the middle. Position 2 is to move my rib cage, okay. How might that be important? Well, once we understand how this horse's body works, we'll see the importance of getting that rib cage to move over off our legs so we can get the body parts to go where we want them to. Position 3, right in front of my back cinch, moves my horse's hindquarters. Again, I can exaggerate position 3 in the same manner that I did position 1 by going behind my back cinch. But you watch as my foot moves. If I was to move my foot up here, look at my foot position as I go, okay? And watch as my foot comes back here, okay? I'm trying to keep my heel where it's not, my toes not pointed to the ground and my heel's like this. So we need to be thinking, again, that when we're sitting on our horse, our body's designed where our toes need to turn out just a little bit so we kind of fit around this horse's body. And as I'm trying to operate these 3 positions, most important thing to remember is to turn your toe out. Okay, if I can get my toe out here, I don't even really have to bring my leg forward to hit position 1. If I'm sitting on my horse and I just let gravity have my legs, they're going to hang right underneath me. And if I'll take that toe and turn it way out, that brings my heel and my calf and my spur, if necessary, right up into position 1. Position 2, right where my feet hang if I just let gravity have them. Position 3, same thing. I'm going to turn that toe out as I come back there because I want to be in this position and not this position. Anytime my toes pointed down like that, guys, I'm out of balance. And what you find is as you get there, you get top heavy, and if that horse slows down or changes speed at all, he's constantly throwing you off balance. So it's very important that as we ride, again, our stirrups are adjusted at a length that makes it easy for us to maintain that heel slightly lower than our toe. So we've got our balance in our seat, our legs, our feet positions, operating the forehand, the rib, and the hindquarters. Now let's talk about the specific body parts before we get moving around here. We've got the head, we've got the neck, again the forehand, the rib, and the hindquarters. We've talked about these 3 because I'm going to operate these 3 a lot laterally off my legs. Shoulder, rib, and hip. The neck and the head. I need my horses to really be flexible. But I need to make sure that I know how this horse's body is designed and how the Lord created it to move. And the main thing I need to realize is right up here at this joint that everybody focuses on so much, the pole, trying to get these horses to come down to this position, okay, where they'll flex at the pole. That's great. And I want my horses soft there. I want my horses to be able to tuck their chin like that and get off that pressure. But as I bring that little 2-year-old over here and we start playing around, here's what we need to realize. Where the skull attaches to the neck, there's the first vertebrae in the neck is called the atlas. Where the atlas attaches to the skull, there's some deep cups in that atlas vertebrae that where the skull sets in there, there's 2 spherical parts of that skull called, let me make sure I get this right, occipital condyle, I believe is what they're called, and those things will set in those cups inside that axis. Okay, and what it allows the head to do is what they refer to as twirling. Okay, and what it is if I can take my horse's head and just slightly tip it over here where I'll basically take my horse's right jaw, his jawbone right here, his jowl, and I'm going to tuck it up under his throat. So what he's going to do with his head is rotate it here or rotate it this way. Okay? And if you watch the plane of this horse's forehead, as I have that jowl right over here tucked up underneath that horse's throat, right there, you'll notice the plane of my horse's forehead is still perpendicular to the ground. What happens when we focus so much on just bringing the nose around here and we're really torquing on it, once you start to roll that horse's head up and you tilt that horse's head sideways, what happens to all these muscles in that horse's neck is they just get to leaning on you. Okay, and that horse is going to get heavier and heavier in your hands because these horses were not designed to cover this country with their head sideways. They're designed to bend their neck, okay? But the really neat thing about that little joint right in there, where the skull connects to the atlas, that lets that horse's head twirl from side to side. That's the secret right there, guys, to really getting these horses' bodies to turn loose. See, if I can get those muscles that attach on each side of that to get short and lengthen as the horse comes here and vice versa this way, then that gets everything else through that horse's body to start to turn loose. Okay, so instead of me picking up on my horse's face square, what I'm going to try to do is offset that just a little bit, where I'm going to get that horse's head to twirl a little bit there to the left, or get that horse's head to twirl a little bit there to the right. Okay, just enough to get those muscles started turning loose, where everything else behind them is going to start to turn loose. Okay, so I don't need to be riding these horses around thinking everything is going to happen square. Okay, to me, as I ask my horse to bend his neck that much, I'm really asking him to twirl that head over there. Okay, but I don't want him thinking, now draw the nose up here towards my knee, where he tips his head sideways. I throw him off balance. Okay, but the feel that I create in my hands is not what I'm after. Okay, I'm after the softest feel I can get there and the softest feel I can get here to get this horse's whole body to turn loose, starting right there. Okay, so it's going to be very important as we get these horses moving around. There, he's just flexed at the pole. Now I can offset that just a little bit, where I've got his head slightly tipped over here where I can see that right eye, or I can be slightly there where I can see the left eye. Okay, that much might be enough to get this horse's body to turn loose. Okay, you notice how as I'm picking this horse up, moving his head a little bit, we've got an angle here with the camera where you can see my feet moving just a little bit. Okay, if you've ever had somebody walk up behind you and tap you on the shoulder, providing you haven't had somebody do it a bunch of times where they're just trying to trick you, most of the time somebody walks up behind you and taps you on the shoulder, you're going to look over that shoulder. Okay, and I mentioned that in that first DVD series that we filmed, excuse me, with Little Rascal over there. I'm going to use this leg to help encourage that horse's attention to come here and get soft in this hand. Okay, and I'll use the same over here. As I use these legs, guys, it's my responsibility to decide how soft I want this horse off these legs. Okay, if I'm going to let him lean into my leg, then that's something I'm going to have to decide. Am I going to put up with that? What am I going to do to discourage it? Okay, for the most part, I'm going to try to use my calf muscle of my leg to squeeze and make contact. There's going to be times you're going to see me just squeezing. There's going to be times you're going to see me with some rhythm in my legs. There's going to be times you're going to see me just slap my horse with my calf muscle to get him off that leg. There's going to be times you're going to see me push with my spur. Might even be times you see me bump with my spur a little bit. Okay, I've got various things I can do here with my legs, but to me, I like to think about my legs and my hand are going to operate in a manner that encourages my horse to get softer, okay? Steady pressure on a lot of horses, them horses will just lean into it. So if I'm thinking about my hands, I'm thinking about maybe I'm just kind of massaging those reins. You kind of see my fingers working right there. I'm not pulling on them. I'm just kind of massaging these reins a little bit. Just kind of help that horse turn loose. Well, I like to think about that same life in my legs, okay? Some rhythm, so to speak, as I'm flowing around with this horse, so I'm not just riding him around with constant pressure that stays there too long. Because again, he's after the release. What does he got to do to get that pressure to go away? Let's go ahead and get moving around here a little bit. Kind of get old Bay woke up a little bit. I'm just going to move him around here for a minute, just kind of leave him alone. Just walk him around here. You can kind of see I've got some rhythm in my body. I'm not just sitting up here like a sack of potatoes. Now, you watch close to what my hands are going to be doing with this horse and this 2-year-old. As we start to pick up on our reins, guys, we need to think about our hands staying out in front of our body. I've watched people and I've heard people preach about this one rein stop, and it's a very useful tool, but there's way more to the scheme, there's way more to the whole idea of using a circle than just my one rein stop. Okay, what I like to think about is the forward motion that I'm going to encourage in my horse's body as I'm picking up on him is what's going to help this horse turn loose of more of that brace and resistance that he naturally carries in his body. Now this little 2-year-old is going to show it a lot more than this horse. So I'm just going to kind of bend this horse around here a little bit. You guys watch where my hands are at. Notice how they're going to stay out here in front of my saddle. We'll go ahead and liven up a little bit. As I pick up on this horse, you see where my hands are at. Now I can hold these reins however I want to, okay? But I'm thinking that I need to operate these reins in a manner that encourages my horse to get soft. I'm thinking about that joint right there where that skull connects to the atlas, that first neck bone, that first vertebrae in my horse's neck, and how I can offset that. I can get that horse's head to twirl on those joints right there to help the rest of his body turn loose a little bit. You kind of see my position here as I'm trotting around. Here I'm posting on the right diagonal, which basically means I'm rising and falling with this hind foot. Just kind of lift that rein up there a little bit. You see where his body position goes to. Lift this left rein a little bit. Now, this horse gets a little bit lazy on me, I'm going to bump him off my legs. I want this horse to carry some life, and I don't want to feel like I got to hold constant contact with my legs. Okay, I'm just thinking about carrying some life, some rhythm with my horse, to where when I come down here, I slow that rhythm. My horse is slowing with my rhythm. Okay, so as I flow around there, you see my hands are staying out here in front of my body. My balance, as I post, I just rise and fall with this hind foot or this hind foot. I'm just trying to give myself a feel of how this horse flows around here. I'm gonna slip over here to these trees and grab that little 2-year-old. We'll get him over here. Things are a lot more unrefined on him. He'll give us a lot more opportunity to see how we build into something that looks more like this.